This is Blue July, and you're listening to the Be Someone podcast. Lights looking bright, the H got the vibe. See my name on the signs, it's my time to shine. When I was cruising 45, and it crossed my mind that I shine like the sun and that I'll be someone.
Hey, welcome everyone to the Be Someone podcast. This is your host and coach, Chris Ortiz, sitting over here with Brad Gilmore,
yes,
podcaster, wrestling ring announcer, oh my God, hip-hop artist 2011, Hall of Fame with Booker T on ESPN Radio. And I imagine there's like 100 other things that I'm leaving out, but hey, we only got an hour, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. My grandmother used to tell me people who are bored are just bored with themselves. So I'd rather be busy than bored, right? That's why I always try to do as much as I possibly can. We only got one go around.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start with this, man. We're going to get to it really quick. Like, what in the heck kind of kid were you? I'm an educator, right?
Yeah.
And I like to look at my students. And I look at my students like, what are they going to do? I can tell what he's going to do. What in the heck were your teachers thinking when they saw, little Brad Gilmore in class?
Well, man, like I was very shy for the large majority of my adolescence, right? I mean, coming up, I went to Edgar Allan Poe Elementary and then Sidney Lanier Middle School and then to Lamar. And I didn't really find out who I was until I think maybe 10th or 11th grade. I was very reserved. If I knew you well, I would talk to you, but I was kind of to myself. So I'm not sure what my teachers thought of me, other than the occasional smart aleck remark. Sometimes I couldn't help myself. I was that kid sometimes in class, not the class clown, the school comedian. But I don't know what they thought. But I remember somewhere around sophomore year in high school is when I really started to put together what I found interesting. What were my strengths? Because I never thought I had any kind of talent of any kind. Whereas all my friends, they were either musicians or they were excelling in sports. And I played sports. I was okay, but not very well. I was not a natural athlete. I wasn't a natural singer or a musician. I never knew really what my niche was until, like I said, around 10th and 11th grade, I started to come into my own and really become comfortable with who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And that's where things started to tick in the right direction for me.
What was that? Like, what was that thing that you found that you were talking about earlier where you started to find yourself?
I think it was, for especially when you're coming up and you as an educator, you see it in kids where they're trying to figure out where they fit in a lot. And there was I think it was a Drake line. He said, never forget the moment you began to doubt, transition in from fitting in to standing out. Right?
Yes.
And I think that resonated with me, saying like, you know what, I don't need to fit into this box, or this box. These are all my interests. This is who I am as a person. This is my background. These are what I like. This is what I don't like. Let me just embrace that. And when I started to embrace it, I realized like all these awesome things started happening. I started meeting people who were really impactful for me in my life. People who started to open doors for me in my life. People who started to see things in myself that I didn't see. And I actually got to give it up for a lot of the teachers who were those people, the Mr. Gerards, the Mr. Sales, the Miss Browns,
shout-outs.
The Mr. Houstons. Those were the people, the Miss Monaggets. Those were the people who saw something in me that I didn't see. I actually remember in 8th grade, Mr. Sales gave me this thing. It was called the Hidden Light Award. We had like an award ceremony, right?
Yeah.
In middle school. I think they all have them. And everyone would get like academic excellence or athletic excellence. And I got the Hidden Light Award.
Sounds pretty cool, though.
It didn't at the time. At the time I'm like, I don't have any discernible talent. But looking back at it retrospectively, it was, again, an acknowledgement that there was something more there than I saw. And finding those things were paramount to, forging a path for me forward.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a number of different educators. Like, what separated them from the ones that you can't even remember their names?
They related to me. They found a way to relate. Mr. Gerard, I remember going into his class, and he would be playing current music of the day that was appropriate, of course. But there was no Cardi B back then, man. But it was appropriate music of the day, and that was a bridge that he built, right? Where, hey, this is something I recognize, and I would talk to him about it, and he was educated on the music itself, so we'd open up that dialogue. Or Miss Brown was more of my contemporary, whereas I was maybe 16, 17. She's fresh out of college teaching in high school. So she's 22. We have a similar reference base.
Yeah.
Right. And my siblings are all much older than me. So I found, like, my oldest brother's 23 years older than I am. So I always found bond and kinship with people who were elder than I. And but finding that point of familiarity, or the thing that we could relate to together, whether it be music or movie references or topics of the day, the pop culture of the day, those are what made them stand out. And then when that bond was formed from those educators, it also motivated me to do well in their classes, because I didn't want to let them down, and I think that that's really the key to a great educator. If you can trick the kid into and convince them that your subject matter is important and that they want to show and prove for you.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Mm-hmm. How would you, if like given a magic wand, would you change the current educational system to, like, say, fit the needs of kids, like yourself?
Well, I think that it's a big question, and I wish I had like a ready-made answer. But I think that we take this one-size-fits-all approach. Like, think about the hat that you're wearing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can go buy the one-size-fits-all hat, and does it really fit all? Well, kind of. It might be a little bit tighter on you or a little bit bigger on them. We need to be thinking about 7 3/4, 7 1/8, 6 5/8. You know what I'm saying? Hat sizes for our kids, tailoring education around them. Finding a way to exploit their strengths, recognize their weaknesses, but not harp on them. I think that when I was teaching for a short period of time, I would always try to give purposeful feedback that empowered the kids and not scalded them. I think that a lot of the times we look at our students as the one-size-fits-all. Why is Jimmy not getting something that George can get, right? But tailoring the approach and localizing our education more, finding a way to connect to kids more, because it's really hard to talk to somebody about, let's say, Edgar Allan Poe, when they have no reference base of that. Yeah. They don't understand why do I care? And I think a standard curriculum that's given across a full district and expecting every kid to connect with that is a ridiculous concept. Do I have a better idea of how to do it? Not at the present moment, honestly, and I wish that I did. And I don't want to be one of the people that highlights a problem without presenting a solution.
Yeah.
But I definitely noticed, like, for me, when I was in the classroom, say I'm wanting to talk about persuasive speeches, this is our topic, and I start going into, the way that a certain politician delivers their speech and why it's effective. And then, like, for instance, I pulled up a clip of President Kennedy in his debate with Richard Nixon in 1960, right? And he was so sharp, and that was such an important debate in the history of this country. And so many of the kids had no idea who John F. Kennedy was. I said, y'all don't know who Kennedy is? And then, like, my lesson plan stops there, right? And we're talking about Kennedy.
Marilyn Monroe.
Is that my subject matter? No, it's not my subject matter. Am I supposed to be diverting off the lesson plan? No. But I think that a good educator does when they see a moment that we can enlighten and give importance to that subject where it wasn't presently.
Right, and that's the hook too.
Yeah.
Like, you tell them, like, hey, Kennedy was also a player.
Yeah, Kennedy was cool, he was man.
Dating the dime piece, Miss It, in Hollywood at the time. And then you're really going to get the kids' attention at that point.
Right.
Then you can beat them over the head with the history.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and to me, again, like, my grandparents were born in 1919 1926, right? My mother and father, 45 and 54. Yeah, I'm born in 92, right? There's a lot of history there that they've seen that I have no concept of. And I remember being a kid, man, just pulling out their legs, like, tell me where you were when Kennedy was shot. Tell me what happened when we bombed Hiroshima. Like, I want to know what the feelings were of people who lived that experience. And to me, when we just regurgitate facts without putting faces to the facts, without putting faces to the topics, without finding that connection, it makes it so hard for them to really understand the purpose of it. Like, I interviewed this guy, Jose Hernandez, who they just did a movie about his life.
NASA.
Yes, they just did a movie about his life, A Million Miles Away. Phenomenal movie. And looking at his story of an immigrant to this country whose parents were migrant farmers in Stockton, California. He didn't even speak the language when he got here. The school I taught in, 97% Hispanic. most of them first-generation Americans, if not all of them. Most of them English second language. And seeing his story, like I thought, man, if I was still in the classroom, I would love to bring this guy in because we're putting a face to something. Because so many kids that I see, they don't think more than the neighborhood that they're in, right? They don't think that anything's...
So that's been their experience. They don't know any better. It's a thought just out of sheer ignorance.
And it's no fault of their own, right?
None.
No fault of their own. But showing the young people that, hey, man, this is possible. Because, okay, to relate it back to me, 05, 06, 07, I'm seeing Paul Wall, Chameleonaire, Slim Thug, Mike Jones, all make it on a national level to where Houston artists talking about Houston things are selling millions of albums. And somebody who's an aspiring musician at the time, I go, whoa, it's possible. Somebody who's talking about 59, in South Lee, holler at me. He made it. He sold millions of albums. He's doing records with all my idols at the time, right? Slim Thug's doing a song with Jay-Z and Beyonce. Like, what is going on? And making the young people know it's possible. I know we got off on a diatribe, but
no, this is wonderful. Keep going, keep going.
But I think that I saw a lot of flaws in my short time in education that I wish there wasn't so much bureaucracy around the educational system. So many people, I would see administrators go to teachers and be like, hey, man, this kid got a 69. You sure you can't make that a 70? You sure we can't scoot this kid along? It's like, no. He didn't do any work. She didn't do anything. She didn't master the subject. We shouldn't push kids along. That's the reason that we're in the place that we are.
Yeah.
We just pushed them along because we didn't. It's a lot of the issues really in this country. We don't want to deal with it. Let's push it along and pass it off to the next person. That's such a big issue in this country, especially in education and government. The bureaucracy is terrible. And incentivizing kids, incentivizing educators to almost go against what they came into the industry to do, you're almost disincentivizing them by asking them to pass kids.
Yeah.
Right? You're disincentivizing them to care. And you wonder why there's a teacher shortage? You wonder why there's a 5-year burnout for teachers? It's because they get disenfranchised with the system very rapidly when they realize it is so difficult to change. And I'm not saying it's impossible. You yourself are an educator and have done phenomenal, I'm sure. And I know that you are teaching subjects that can actually empower and change people's lives. We talked about that before. But yeah, man, I saw a lot of stuff that I wish that I could have changed, and perhaps one day I will.
Maybe HISD's superintendent job will pop back up one day. Brad Gilmore for HISD super.
Well, maybe we'll see.
That guy's gonna run himself off. Well, yeah, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, he'll do himself. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hey, let's go to something a little more lighthearted. How did you get into the pod game? Because you have your hand in a lot of different pies when it comes into these pods.
Yeah, man. So podcasting again. So doing radio, broadcasting, television, it was never an interest of mine. It was never an avenue that I wanted to do. I never thought about it. The only radio person I knew was Howard Stern, and that was from the movie that he had, and seeing clips of him and being coming up in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was like the popular shock jock. But I was in a band. I am in a band, 2011, and we went to go do an interview at this local radio station. There was an online radio station called Local Live Houston. And afterward, I remember getting into conversations with one of the program directors over there, and was like, "Hey, man, you're pretty good, like just naturally, on the mic. Have you ever thought about doing this more?" And I said, no, I hadn't. And at 18 years old, this guy was like, hey, what if I give you a spot on my network? And shout out to Big Ram and Jordan Pinnell. And I said, that'd be awesome. And so with no experience, with no research, with no homework, no idea how to do anything, I had a 2-hour radio show every Tuesday, fresh out of high school. And that's where I started just having people on, and I started to try to build something, and that led to another radio station, and then it led to, what if I just did this all on my own? And that was really during not the advent of podcasting, but right before the boom started. So we're talking 2012 is when I started doing a podcast. And just building. And I felt, as probably you did, it was a great opportunity to talk to people who I'm genuinely curious about and interested in. And the first people I would go to were all, like, again, my idols. I wanted to talk to Slim. And I remember just hitting Slim in a DM, cold.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I had Slim Thug in studio for 2 hours, randomly. He didn't know me from Adam. And having that ability just continued to open doors for me and building a network of people and like-minded creatives, and led to a lot of hosting opportunities, which actually ended up leading to Reality of Wrestling and Booker T, and just crazy how it all started.
Yeah, what is your process? Because I think it's really cool to, I don't want to say share the blueprint, but, let aspiring, podcasters and then other people that are looking to go, in a similar route. Like, what is your process with podcasting?
Man, my process?
Yeah.
As far as, like, what, putting a show together, or?
Yeah, let's say that you got someone that you're interested in, you want to talk to them.
How you reach out?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's something I still do to this day. Like, if they're somebody local, I just reach out, fresh in a message. If I find an email on their website, if I can if they're somebody who's of certain notoriety and there might be a publicist, I go and find a publicist. I'm actually about to put people on game right now. There's a website called whorepresents.com. And you can go there, you type in any celebrity's name. I'm talking about anybody. And it'll come up with their agent, their manager, their lawyer, their publicist. And it'll have a name, a phone number, an email. And I would cold email so many people. And I always say, here's who I am. This is what I do. Here are other people who've been on. Would they be interested? And that process has never failed me to this day. Do I get a lot of no's? Yeah.
Oh,
totally.
Heck yeah, right?
I have so many unanswered emails in my, sent mailbox. I mean, it's ridiculous.
What is your ratio?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'd say about 30% of all emails I send, I actually get a reply from. And out of that 30%, maybe 50% of the 30 actually end up being something, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to share because I think people want this immediate gratification, thinking that they're going to get an answer or reply to every single DM or email that they send, and that's not the game.
So when I started in radio, I had one dream guest. One. Bun B. It's the only person I wanted to interview. I'd email his publicist. I'd email his manager. I'd talk to people who I knew he knew. Like, hey, can you put the word in for me? Can we try to make this happen? And not that I ever got a no, but I just never really got a yes, right? It was like, oh, yeah, well, let's get time. And I'm sure it never reached Bun's ears. Because I would run into Bun a lot. And I didn't get that interview. I'm talking about I tried since 2011. I didn't get that interview to 2 months ago.
Oh, man.
Right? 2 months ago is when I got it.
11 years.
11 years of trying to get this interview of a guy who lives in my city, who I know, But to me, persistence pays, always. So many no's, yes, you're always going to get rejection, no matter what. Whether that's with a lady that you're trying to get with, or a job you're trying to get, or a guest you're trying to get, you're always going to get rejection. Doesn't mean that one no from a guest in particular is a forever no. Hey, maybe it's not the right time for them.
Yes.
Hey, follow them on social if you really like them. Do they have a project coming out? Are they putting out a new album? Are they a part of a movie? Do they have a book coming out? Are they starting a podcast? Hey, guess what then? They're probably about to go on a press run.
Yes.
Hey, this is a good time to reach out, right? I mean, I just had Matthew McConaughey on my podcast.
That is a dream guest of mine right there.
I had Matthew McConaughey doing
children's books.
Yeah, he wrote a children's book. It's a great book, by the way. Great message. I'm not just saying that. Like, it's a really great message. But how do you think I got that? That's from persistence. It's from trying. Hey, and guess what? I might have done an interview with somebody else and they have the same publicist. And now that publicist is like, oh, yeah, I really like that Brad guy.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember him. Yeah, give him the interview. Right? And it's just, man, just staying on it.
Well, you've spoken to, so many, so much well-known talent, right? Or established talent. What is some of the wisdom that you've gleaned off of some of those people? Like, you just spoke to McConaughey, you spoke to Trish Stratus, spoke to the gentleman, that went up, or he's playing the gentleman that went up into space.
Yeah.
Like, you've talked to a who's who, like, what is some of the wisdom that you've brought home, those nuggets?
You know what? it's great that you asked that because it just so happens to be in that Bun interview. This is the one that stuck with me. Because everybody who's met Bun B, have you ever met him?
No, that's another dream one.
But yeah, he's a great guy. Anybody who's ever met him, they never have a bad Bun B story. So it's like, oh, I met Bun B. He was so nice. He took a picture with me. Like, he signed an autograph. He was awesome. So I asked him, I'm like, no one has a bad Bun B story. And you've been at this for 30 years. How's that possible? And he said, I walk into every room like my mother's in there. I said, man, am I always going to remember that? Right? And what he's saying is, hey, man, if you walk into a room, it's almost like walking in church. You know when to button up if you're in church, right? We know it's almost like as soon as you pass through the doors of a church, something in your brain turns off profanity, right? Like you just don't even think about it, right? And I think it's the same with what Bun was saying is walk into every room like mom's watching. How would you act if your mom was watching or your grandma or your uncle or whomever?
Best behavior.
Best behavior. I'm going to smile. I'm going to shake somebody's hand. I'm going to greet them. And I'm always going to be present with them. And I also learned that from The Rock indirectly. Because The Rock's been, one of my favorite, if not my favorite wrestler of all time. Him and like Macho Man and Taker and Book was on that list, actually. Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold. These were some of my idols. And I've gotten to meet them all now, which is wild. But I remember meeting The Rock earlier this year at an XFL game. This is one of the most famous people on the planet.
Possibly the most famous
Probably
person.
the most famous person on the planet. He's got a million things he's doing. And he and I spoke, I'm not lying to you, for about 5-6 minutes. Just me and him, nobody else around. And then his business partner, ex-wife, Danny Garcia, came up and we talked for a couple more minutes. But in that time, The Rock didn't look over at somebody else, didn't pull his phone out. He didn't try to curtail the conversation. He gave me that moment. He's like, I know that this is, maybe I'm being presumptuous, but I'm sure he thought this is probably cool for this kid to talk to The Rock. And I'm going to make sure I'm present and I'm engaged and I make him feel a certain way about our encounter. And learning that and going through that, not that I didn't know it before, but it reaffirmed like, make sure you always look somebody in the eye and pay attention to them and give them your full, undivided attention and be present with them.
It's such a simple thing to do, right?
It's so simple, but it's
free.
so hard. It's free. And that's one of the lessons Booker's taught. Yes, sir, no, ma'am, please, thank you. They cost you nothing, but they can give you everything, right? Just showing people their respect is what we all want.
Right. And one of the things that I've been trying to instill upon my kids in our teen leadership class is like things that are rare. Have a lot of value. And right now, please, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, thank you. Those things are becoming a rarity. Therefore, if you apply them, in your everyday life, like, oh my God, you're going to become a more valuable, member of the community, a resource, a person that people want to lean upon. Like,
well, I mean, and for me, like with again, I go back to my core four, which is my mom, dad, my grandmother, and my grandfather. Without them, I would not be the person that I am. I mean, a lot of people have good relationships with their grandparents, but I saw my grandparents every day of my life, right? Every single day.
Did they live on the same street or what?
No, they didn't, but we would go to their house after school every day. They would actually take me to school. They'd pick me up from school forever. And my grandfather, World War II veteran, several medals won in the U.S. Army. My grandmother lived through the Great Depression from Decatur, Alabama, not a well-off family. Her parents were immigrants from Ireland. Her mother died when she was 13 years old. I mean, a hard life, right, in a lot of ways, both of them. But then they became so prosperous later in life. My grandmother was the first executive vice president of a bank who was a female in the city's history, right? I mean, that's pretty big.
It's huge.
It's huge. And then we're talking about in the 60s and 70s when...
Yes, that never happened.
She
was an anomaly.
No. And, and in learning from them, my grandmother, I remember like being in the car, and if I said something that was grammatically incorrect, she wouldn't let me out of the car until I said it right? And she wouldn't tell me what to say, but she said, "You're not saying it right. Say it right." Say yes, sir. Say no, ma'am. Say please. Say thank you. These are things that my parents, who came from a way different generation than I did, came from humble beginnings. My mother born in Mogi, Oklahoma. My dad in Waco, Texas. My grandfather's from Damon, Texas. Population 535 to this day.
Where is that at?
It's not far from here. It's further north. It's about 2 hours outside the city. 535 people, and I've actually been back to Damon several times.
One stoplight town.
One stoplight town. And I've been back there several times, and I've met a lot of great people from there who have a great outlook on life. But learning from those four, God, it was so big for me, you know. And it's something that a lot of people in my generation, especially the generation that comes after me, a lot of lessons that they just didn't have the opportunity to be instilled into because they didn't have people from an older generation. I mean, my dad had me when he was 48 years old, right? Almost 50. You know, he's 78 now and has seen so much in life. You know, we're talking about from no TVs to TVs on your phone.
Yeah.
Right? And getting that game from them has been so key to who I've become as an individual.
I wish more kids would get that game. You know, one day they're going to realize.
Well, like, I was on a plane recently, and there was a woman, her name was Judy Harper. I didn't know her. We happened to sit next to each other. I was going to put my AirPods in and listen to an audiobook, and she started talking to me, and so I took them out, and we started talking before the plane takes off, and, you know, she's in her 80s, and she lives in Houston, and she's an artist, so we started talking about art. Next thing I know, we talked for 2.5 hours throughout the whole plane ride. We land, I walk with her to get her bags, and we're still talking. We exchange numbers, and now we talk every so often still. And because I have such a reverence for the elders. I have such a reverence for people who are older than I am.
What a resource, right?
Oh, my gosh. It's the greatest thing in the world. And to me, I remember in American Gangster when Denzel said the loudest one in the room is the weakest one in the room.
Facts.
You know, God gave us two ears and one mouth. Listen twice as much as we talk. So if I have those people, I'm listening. Yeah, I'm listening all the time. I'm soaking up the game because, you know, we were talking off air. When I was 20 and 19 and 22, maybe I was a little bit different. Maybe I thought I knew more than I did. But as I got to that mid-20s and beyond, I really just started listening way more than I spoke and wanted to hear what other. And that's why I really like interviewing.
It's like reading a book. Every time you sit down with someone, like I feel like after you leave, it's like reading a huge chapter book. It's like reading Harry Potter.
Right. And we're talking about the Order of the Phoenix, like the thick one, volume 5. But yeah, man. And so that's why I love interviewing too, is because I get to really ask, because a lot of times it's very genuine. Like I really want to know answers to questions. I really want to understand people's process more than anything. What their thinking is, how they come to decisions, how they formulate a character.
Well, that's the hack, right? That's the blueprint. Like it could help us, not like you're doing it on purpose, but like we could learn so much by shutting our mouth and just listening.
Yeah, just listen, man. Such a big thing. And pay attention.
I'm going to ask you about this. You know, you're in the wrestling world, right? Like,
yeah, man.
You first class ring announcer, you know, going there dressed to the nines and do a hell of a job, you know, introducing everybody. And then you're also on a podcast. But like, how did you get into the wrestling game? Because me, myself, I'm a lifelong wrestling fan. Like, that's what I grew up on. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, golly, this guy Brad's living the dream.
Well, man, I was 5 years old and I was turning the channel. This is like the age-old story that everybody has. And I saw Stone Cold Steve Austin on Monday Night Raw. And I'm like, what is this? Who is this? What? You know? And I fell in love with wrestling throughout middle school. And then into high school, I got interested in music and girls. And, you know, wrestling kind of went the wayside. But I was in the radio game and in music. And one day I woke up on a Saturday morning. And this is really a story of I never waited for opportunity to knock. I think that's a silly thing that we tell people. Oh, when opportunity knocks, you better answer. No, man, I'm about creating opportunities. So I wake up one morning, I'm on my phone, checking my text messages and emails, who needed me when I was sleeping, right? And I'm going through Twitter, and I see something from WWE. I would just watch WrestleMania once a year. And so I saw something from WWE tweeted out, and it had Booker T in it. And I'm like, oh, man, Booker T, like one of the coolest dudes ever. The first wrestling show I ever went to was at the Toyota Center in 2006. It was a SmackDown house show, and the main event was Rey Mysterio defending the World Championship against Booker T, King Booker. This is the first show I ever saw. So I remember that. Yeah, the king of the wild. And so I see something from Booker, so I click on his profile. And then he happened to have a tweet looking for a ring announcer for my Reality of Wrestling promotion. Send an email to this email. It was to a guy named Paul Cook. Didn't even think about it. Clicked the email. Said, I've always liked wrestling. This sounds cool. Wrote an email saying, oh, yeah, I've done some ring announcing or some announcing at football games and baseball games. All lies. Complete lies. Complete lies. But I just want to get my foot in the door.
Yeah.
And I said, I do radio, whatever. 3 weeks go by. I actually am with my bandmates. We're going to go do an interview on somebody's show, and I get a phone call from a 323 number. And I go, that's L.A. I don't know anybody who's calling me from L.A.
Bill collector.
And then so I'm like, hello? And they're like, yeah, is this Brad? It was a very thick Southern accent. I was like, yes. He goes, this is Paul Cook with Reality Wrestling. We want to see if you can come down and meet with us. We want to talk to you about the position we have. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so this was on a Monday. They wanted to meet on a Thursday. And I'm giving you the full story here because I think it's important. So I go in to meet them on that Thursday, and I wake up, and I go to the sink to brush my teeth and get ready for the day, and I felt like something wasn't right. Something was wrong. I couldn't figure it out. I'm 19 years old, 18 or 19 at the time, fresh out of high school. And this is going to sound weird, Chris, but like the toothpaste tasted funny, right? I didn't understand what the problem was. And then I looked in the mirror, and I realized like only one eye was blinking. And then I realized, wait a minute, nothing on the side of my face is moving, right? And I was like, oh, this probably isn't good. I thought I had a stroke or something.
That's what I'm thinking.
And so I go to the doctor, and they say, well, you didn't have a stroke, you had Bell's palsy, which is facial paralysis on one side of the face. Jim Ross, famously, the wrestling announcer, has it. George Clooney had it. Young Jeezy. And so they're like, we're not sure how long it'll last. We're not sure what causes it. We don't know how to cure it. But they did give me a prescription for an eye patch and Valtrex, which makes me laugh so hard. I'm like, what did the pharmacist think I did this weekend? But anyway, fast forward, I have this facial paralysis, but I know I still got to go to do my job. So I go to the audition. Booker's not there that night. It's Kevin Bernhardt and Paul Cook. It's me and one other guy it's come down to for the job. They put an iPad on the desk. They say, we want you to call this match. Right? This is cold.
Legit tryout.
Legit tryout. So me and this other guy are calling a match on an iPad.
Do you remember who was in the ring?
I remember one. It was American Eagle was one of them. I don't remember the other. But I remember American Eagle specifically. And I can't remember the other person. But anyway, I think it might have been Rockstar at the time. And we're doing the match. We're calling it. I'm not remembering the names of moves. I'm making jokes that don't land. I made a Donnie and Marie Osmond joke. Ooh. Why would I do that? That was not a good idea. No. But I made it, and it was one of the first times I can remember in life doing something and knowing in the moment, I am screwing this up royally. I am doing very bad.
Were you all in, though, on the screw up?
What do you mean?
Well, I think there's a value to, like, when we go all in, even if we're going to screw up. I tell my athletes, like, if we're going to mess up, man, just go ahead and mess up all the way. Like, most of the time, people can't even tell the difference.
Oh, yes. I understand what you're saying. No, this was like a level 40 mess up. Like it wasn't even savable. And like when you say, like, you ever have a joke that you say in conversation and nobody laughs? It felt like that for 5.5 minutes, right? Like it just was not good. And so I remember leaving that night going, well, I messed that up, and I didn't even get to meet Booker. Like I was so mad. And this is again, I had Bell's palsy. I was trying not to show it to anybody. Get a phone call the next day. Hey, our ring announcer for this Saturday got strep throat. Have you ever done ring announcing? So they were looking for a commentator at first. They said, have you ever done ring announcing? I said, oh, yeah, sure, I've done ring announcing. Yeah, absolutely. They're like, okay, well, come down to the school tonight. Booker wants to meet you. So I sit outside of Booker's office for an hour and a half waiting for him to call me in. They said to meet at 6. It's 7:30. I'm still not in the office, and I can hear him. This is the old gym on Winkler. Finally, he calls me in, sits me down. He's like, you're a pretty good-looking kid. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Book. I see this mountain of a man behind a small desk at the time. And he starts talking to me a little bit, and we have this great meeting. I'm trying, again, not to show anything with my face. And, again, it would take everything to blink, like every muscle in your body. And Booker happened to have this fan on his desk that was blowing right on the side of my face that I couldn't move. And so my eye is watering, right? And then all of a sudden I feel this tear bubbling up on the side of my eye. And I'm like, please don't cry in front of Booker T. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. Next thing you know, tears start streaming down my face. When Booker's talking about giving me an opportunity, I'm thinking he's probably thinking I'm like the biggest wimp ever. And I'm crying uncontrollably, you know. And then anyway, I end up going on Saturday. I do the show. Never ring announce ever in my life, even though I told them that I had. In my mind, I'm thinking Michael Buffer, Bruce Buffer. This is what I want to sound like. Yeah. I do my best at an imitation of probably Bruce Buffer. And then after the show, Booker goes, "You sounded pretty good tonight, kid." I'm like, "Well, thanks, Booker." He's like, "Yeah, be here next month." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so I showed up the next month. And the next thing I know, this other ring announcer wasn't around anymore. And all of a sudden, I got that job. And then, I don't know, I just found myself sitting in the room and being there. I think the biggest thing you can be is present and being and showing up, and being willing to work harder than the person next to you. And so I remember Booker a couple years go by, and he's like, "Hey man, I'll never forget. He called me on Valentine's Day, 2015. He called me and said, I'm getting a radio show on Sports Radio 610. I want you to come in and like read stuff off social media for me to react to. What do you say?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely.
I'm all in.
I'm all in." And then next thing you know, like, you know, for the last 5 or 6, 7 years, we've been doing that together and going to Vegas and watching fights and bonding and understanding this game from radio and podcasting in a new way and being next to a legend like that. Man, I've learned so much, and I've gotten to see so much and do so much that I wouldn't have been able to do if not for him extending the hand and saying, like, "Let me give you a shot, kid."
Yeah, well, not just that, too. You also, like, reaching out, right, and over-exaggerating your experience
Making my
a little
opportunity,
bit.
though. Making my opportunity. I've always said that. Like, some people are like, "Well, how did you do that? How did you talk to this person? How did you get to host that? How did you..." Because I reached out. I always hear, like, these people like, "Oh, I'm waiting for the phone to ring." Like, I'm not waiting for the phone to ring. Like,
call.
I'm not doing that. I'm going to reach out, and I might get a no. I might get a next time. I might get a "we don't need your services," but I'm going to reach out. I'm going to try to make it happen. Yeah. Whether it's successful or not, I mean, I got to try.
What's the magic right now behind Reality of Wrestling? Because I just see them continue to grow and level up and grow and level up. It's just like a steady climb, and it looks like the future's as bright as they would like it to be. What are they doing differently over there compared to some of the other like indie promotions?
And like respect to everybody else who's out there.
Of course, no disrespect to
100%
anybody.
respect. And I always like when there are places to work and stuff like that. But nobody else has what we have. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. And what is it that we have? We have our own facility. We have a show that's set up for television. Yeah. We teach a television style of wrestling. We have Booker T.
That's a major draw.
Like, there are a lot of great schools that you can learn from, and there are a lot of great people who are names that you've heard of who are teaching at these schools. Yeah. None of them have the resume that Booker has. None of them has the knowledge that he has. This guy has literally done it in every aspect you can think of in this business. Being successful in a tag team, being successful as a singles, being successful as a technical wrestler, being successful as an entertaining wrestler, being good on the mic, being good as a babyface, being good as a heel, working on top, working in the middle, working the opening matches, being a commentator, being a general manager character on the show, being an announcer, being a pre-show analyst. Like, what aspect of the game has this guy not done and done it at a high level and continues to do it? No one else has it.
His ability to transition is
it's impeccable.
Second to none.
It's second to none. He is so impressive to me.
What do you attribute that to?
Well,
to me, that's the most impressive thing is the transitions. You just went through like 10 different things, and he's done them wonderfully.
Because he's a utility player. He's just one of those guys where you put him in the spot, and he'll figure it out, right? He'll figure it out. Do you remember the movie Catch Me If You Can?
I believe so.
So it's about Frank Abagnale, who's this like con artist, right? Played by Leonardo DiCaprio. His dad in the movie is played by Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken has this speech where he goes, 2 mice fell into a bucket of cream, right? The first mouse quickly gave up and drowned, right? The second mouse tried to escape, and he tried so hard that eventually he ended up churning that butter into cream and then crawled right out. And he said, I'm here today to tell you I'm the second mouse, right? And I know it sounds silly, but that's what I think of when I think of people like Booker or yourself or some people might say me, of just grinding it out. And whatever position you find me in, I'm going to work really hard at it. And I'm going to try my absolute best to crawl out of that bucket of cream, right?
Yeah.
And churn it into butter so I can make something out of it. And I think that's what he's done is, hey, we're going to put you in an announcer role. Booker's like, I've never done this before, but now, I mean, this man takes extensive notes. He writes down, he might hear something good in a movie, and he pulls out a notepad and writes it down. Hey, I'm going to say that. That's good for commentary. Or, hey, I'm listening to a game, and I like the Mark Jacobs call. I'm gonna take that, right? Or Mark Jackson, excuse me. And he does stuff like that. There's a lot that you don't see, and I always say that about performance in general. Even something like this show. People see what happens when the cameras come on and when they go off. They don't see the setup, the preparation, the scheduling, the research, the studying, the understanding, the navigation of the conversation, the post-production, the edit, the lighting, the amount of stands that our man Josh had to bring up here.
Josh Ricks over there, yes.
But you know what I mean? People don't understand the work that goes behind it. They just see what they see.
They see the conversation.
And that's what it is with reality wrestling is nobody else can offer you the education in this art form that reality wrestling can, ever. No one else is drawing 1,000 people to a show to let you perform on a stage like that. Nobody else has NXT talent that comes down and gives the guys in our company the rub, for lack of a better term. And nobody has the expertise and knowledge and tutelage of somebody like Booker T, who's literally done it on all levels and done it at a high level in all levels.
And all that stuff is offered at the school too, right? Like
yes.
there's promo classes.
There's a promo class. There's Charmel will come in and teach acting classes. There's all kinds of technical wrestling classes. There's, hey, let's work on your entrances tonight. Hey, what is your ring gear going to be like? 99% of any indie show you ever go to, guess what happens? Hey, you're on third. You got 20 minutes. You do your match. You walk to the curtain. Promoter's there. Great match. That's the extent of it. At our school, it's like, hey, you got 7 minutes. This is what you're going on with. This is what happens before your match. This is what happens after match. This is the story we're trying to tell. Hey, come in and pitch your match to Booker. Let's listen to what you have to say. Hey, Booker's going to give you feedback on your match before it. You're going to go do your match. Afterward, he's going to give you more feedback. This is what you did well. This is what you didn't do well. As an educator, you know feedback's the biggest thing.
Oh, yes.
You got to have that corrective that correction. Hey, this is what you did good. This is what you need to work on. Okay? And no one else has that ability. Hey, as a commentator, I'm going to come up to you. Hey, what's your finish? What story are you trying to tell? What's something interesting that I can work into commentary about your life, your background? Did you play football? Were you an MMA guy? Did you do boxing? Were you a stage actor? We worked stuff in like that, and that's why you see people like Roxanne Perez, Roxy, go to NXT and be at home, right? Because she's done it already.
Yeah.
The best practice is doing it already. She knows what time cues are. She knows where the hard camera is. She knows the referee's got a gimmick in his ears giving you time cues. She's done it all. She's experienced it before. That's why the practice is as important as the performance at Reality of Wrestling. You know, they always say practice makes perfect, right? Practice doesn't make perfect unless you practice perfect.
Yeah.
And you need that ability to do that. We offer that. No one else does.
That's a hell of a package, man. A hell of a package. I'm gonna make a sharp right turn though.
We're
gonna talk about something a little bit fun, man. I just found out myself, man. 2011. Talk to me, man. Talk to me, man. Musician.
This was my first love. This is without the band 2011. We have a new album out, Happiness, Sadness, etc. You've gotten to hear it. Without that group, I wouldn't be doing anything that I've done. Any project you see me put out, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's whatever it might be.
This is the genesis. I
always shout 2011 out at the very end. I always shout out to my brothers, Avery, Trey, Corbin, Motai. Without y'all, none of it would have been possible. Because I met Avery Davis when we were 6 years old, since 1999. We've been best friends forever. I came to him one time after that big Houston hip-hop wave and said, what if we started a rap group? It was just a weird idea that I had one day at school. He said, let's do it. And then it starts, we're completely awful. We add in Trey, we're still not that great. We add in Motai, we're still not that great. We add in Dallas, we start to get better. And then, we put out a few albums that got acclaim here in the city. I mean, Houston Chronicle covering us at the time. Houston Press nominated us for Best Rap Group at the Houston Press Music Awards. And we turned it into something. And then, we all went into our own separate ways and started to work on our own individual projects. Avery became very successful as a solo musician and a touring musician. He just got off a country and western tour, playing drums for a country band. I'm talking about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Dallas moves to L.A. Motai starts a media company where he's doing commercials and videography and things like that. But without 2011, man, it wouldn't have started. A lot of people don't know, I come from a music background. That's what I love. That's where I live. This is, my biggest passion. And a lot of people don't peg me for the rapper type. But I couldn't sing worth a damn, and I couldn't play anything. What else am I supposed to do, Chris? I didn't have any other options.
But you can drop some bars.
So I had to learn. I didn't even know how to stay on beat. I didn't know how to write a verse. I didn't know what 16 bars meant. But I figured it all out. And it was 2011 that put me on a stage when I was 15 years old for the first time, performing in front of a crowd that...
What did that feel like? Because most people don't get to stand up on a stage, right? And then look out in front of them and see, let's say 20 people. Mm-hmm. What did it feel like for you to get up on stage? Can you remember the nerves? Can you remember the anxiety?
It was the anxiety. I always say I never get nervous, but I do get anxious. I'm always ready for it to start and I'm ready for it to end. But when in the middle of it, I'm loving it, but I feel that heart beating. And I remember it was at Numbers Nightclub on Westheimer in Taft. It was our first show. And it was probably 30 people there, 40 people at the most. And we were one of the first acts of the night. And going up there and looking out in the crowd, you're like, oh, okay. We're not just performing for each other in our boys' practice room anymore. This is for real, and this is do or die. But that taught me so much about how to read an audience.
What did you learn?
Man, I learned a lot of what to do and what not to do. But for the biggest thing is looking at reactions of people and tailoring my approach thereafter. Hey, this didn't get a reaction, but this did. I thought that this line, when we dropped the music out, was going to make this a big statement. People didn't really care about that. They liked when I did this on stage. And I started noticing people reacted to the energy that I would bring because I felt like I had to overcompensate for what I perceived as a lack of talent and natural ability. So I overcompensated with energy. And people who were around at the time, it was even written about in articles, I would jump off the stage regularly. I would run around the venue. I would do these extra things to try to, overcompensate for something that I felt that I wasn't bringing. But all of that led me to figuring out how to get reactions from people and then getting feedback from them. Because, communication is a process.
There's a feedback loop.
And feedback is the last step of it. You have your message, you encode it, you send it, whatever. But you need that feedback. And that taught me how to read an audience. And so I went from just playing shows to all of a sudden people started reaching out to me to host shows. So I'd be like the actual MC coming up and introducing acts and opening up a show and realizing, oh, maybe I need to throw in a few jokes here. Crafting jokes, learning how to be kind of your almost late night show host, which would be my ultimate goal. I look up to Johnny Carson and is my favorite of all time, and wanting to be that again, bring a late night show to Houston is a goal of mine. Making Houston
that would go over. That would definitely go over.
Look, by the end of next year, I think I told this to you, we're going to be the third largest city in the United States, the third largest. Why are we not a major media conglomerate? Why do people look over Houston all the time? I do not understand it. It drives me up a wall, and that's one of my biggest motivations is I don't want to go to L.A. I don't want to go to New York. I have zero desire of that. As Lance McCullers says, bury me in the H, man. Ooh. This is where I'm born and bred. I rep it to the fullest, and I want it to be that next major media market. And getting people like Matthew McConaughey to come on your show in Houston, getting people like Mark Wahlberg to come on your show in Houston, getting Jay Leno, Jimmy Fallon, Kelly Ripa, people who are major in the media world to come on my show. For the Houston people, I want to make this a major media market.
No reason it can't be.
And there's no reason it can't be. But to go back to it, all of this was the genesis of 2011, and we decided to come back 10 years later after we released our last album. It started with a phone call to one of our boys. Hey, man, how you doing? Everything good? Hey, what's Avery doing? Let's add him on the phone call. And we added him on the phone. Hey, wouldn't it be fun to like put a record together? Well, I wonder what Dallas is doing. Hey, let's get him on the phone. And we just had this phone call and said, let's just do this again. Let's see if we can still do it. And I remember I told my wife, hey, it's going to be boys' weekend. I'm going to have all the guys at the house. You
were hosting.
Yeah, can you make some arrangements? So she went and stay with her sister. And I had the boys out, and we did one. We just said, let's do one song and see if we can make this happen. And the song we did is called Step Close. It's on our album. And we did it, and we all looked at each other like, hey, we can still kind of do this. And again, this isn't like go pull a beat off of YouTube. This is we sit and collaborate. Avery is the producer. Hey, Abe, I'm thinking about this kind of feel. Like, what do you have? And he'll go through all his keys and his sounds, and he plays some chords. Ooh, I like that. Let's take that. What kind of drums? And so we craft these songs together as a 5-person unit. And, we'll go into another room. What do we think about for the hook? What if we set this up here, this up here? And to me, it's like putting together an interview. And where's the story? How do I want to start this? What are the questions I want to go through? What's the roadmap? And it's the same in music. And we put together this album. And this album I'm very proud of. Because when I listen back to it, I have that imposter syndrome of, am I tripping or is this good? Like it was one of those things. And I remember listening to the masters with my wife in the truck and going, man, this is awesome. And then having the ability, we only have 2 collaborators on the album with us. One of them happens to be Booker T.
The intro.
Yeah, Booker is throughout the album on certain songs as the narrator. Because we wanted to tell, the name of the album is Happiness, Sadness, etc. We wanted to tell about the journey of life. Sometimes you're up, man. Sometimes you're down. Sometimes you're in between, and you don't really know how to characterize where you are in life. Maybe you're stuck in the middle. We wanted to really bring that to an album and talk about our growth as not only musicians, but as people, and understanding the tragedies that we've all had in our lives. The worst thing to happen to you is the worst thing to happen to you, right? And you can't compare your downfalls to others, and you can't compare your highs to others either. Comparison is the thief to joy. And but we wanted to really encapsulate those emotions. And Booker just has such a great voice in general. And so I remember calling him when the album was done, like, hey, Book, I need you to bless us real quick. Like, because Booker would see us perform back when I was performing at the very beginning. And so we were gracious to have that. And the other band we collaborate with is a group called Say Girl Say, which is actually my sister-in-law is one of the lead singers of it. But this is what's so crazy, Chris. This is how the universe works. When we were in high school, we would listen to this band, Say Girl Say. Like, we would listen to them, me and my boy Trey, and we'd be like, man, we'd love to do a song with them one day. And all these years later, one of them's my sister-in-law. How crazy is that?
Small world.
Small world. She's my sister-in-law now, and then that's when I made that phone call, like, hey, we got a record for you.
Do you feel like it was essential that y'all all go in your own different ways and, I guess, like, be masters of different genre, so to speak, and then come back together and turn into... golly, the Power Rangers, so to speak, right? Like a better version.
100%. This is the best music we ever made, and it's weird when you don't touch something for 10 years, and then you pick it up, and you're like, oh, wow. Not only can we still do it, we're actually doing it at a higher level than we did before, and I do attribute it to, especially for me, this is the biggest growth I had as an artist, and I do attribute it to all the things that I've done since. Doing wrestling, doing live events, doing interviews, doing radio, doing television, doing my work with CW now. Like, all of those things came into play with this new record. And I think that's why it turned out as great as it did, because we all had our new strengths to add to our old ones.
Y'all came back souped up. You talked about a homie that's went out to L.A. in the media, right? And
Yeah.
Like, golly, when's this album going to drop?
So the album's out October 27th. So
that's real close.
Maybe by the time people are hearing this, they're hearing the record. And yeah, it's 14 songs. And again, man, there's literally, and you've heard some of it, there's anything that you like musically, it's on this record. Like, that's why it's so hard to call it. It's not a rap album at all. It's definitely hip-hop influence. But we have, like, 80s synth ballads on here.
Yes, you do.
We got some, like, 90s R&B feels. We've got mid-2000s R&B feels. We've got disco-type records. We've got traditional hip-hop records. We got some indie rock songs. We have a ballad. We have a spoken word poem on this album, right? And that song's very awesome. It's called Stones, and I encourage everybody to listen to that one. And once the story comes out about what that song is, it's not mine to tell, but it makes it even more impactful. And to have literally Booker bookend the album with the intro, the outro, and a couple places in the middle. I even do an old Houston Screw record.
I did hear that. Man. That was a nice little addition.
Yeah, and just giving love to our influences and what we've done, Happiness, Sadness, etc., is probably the project. And again, I've done books, I've done radio, I've done television, I've done podcasts, I've done all these cool things. This album is the only thing I've ever done that I consider great.
Oh man, this is what's getting you up in the morning right now.
This is fueling me, man. This gave me that spark that I need.
This is special, man, because you've done, so many cool things in your life, and for this to be at the moment the exclamation point, right?
Well, I'll say this, and I know we're probably getting short on time, but I'll say this. I turned 30 at the end of last year, 2022, and we're going into 2023. And I don't know if you're a big hoops guy.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
very
so
much
anytime I see the number 23, you obviously think of Michael Jordan. And whenever I turned 23, the age, everyone would say back in the day, we'd be like, oh, this is your Jordan year, right? This is the year you're supposed to go hard. This is your Jordan year, you're 23. When I saw that it was 2023 and I turned 30, I said, man, I'm not going to let up this year. Anything I've ever wanted to do, I'm going for it. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I want to be on television. I ended up on TV. Got a deal a few months later with the CW. I want to expand the radio show, did it. I want to interview bigger guests, got it. I want to finish an album, did it. I want to finish my master's, did it, right? I want to write a screenplay. I want to finish a third book. Almost done with those. I wanted to go hard in that Jordan year so I can never look back and go, man, I wish I would have. Yeah. That's what keeps me up at night. Yeah. I wish I would have. Oh, I can't do that.
You don't want to be sitting on your bed, right?
No.
On your deathbed.
Right.
And just thinking about, like, what are the things that, I really wanted to do, and you're going after them, and you're going to figure it out one way or the other, and you're going to do them. And the way that life has kind of turned out for you by doing them.
By just doing it, waking up and doing it. And I'm blessed to have a great unit in my life, a support system. My wife is incredible. We've known each other since high school, and she's always been there to support me no matter what. No matter if it means sacrificing time away, she's like, baby, you got to go out and do this. This is what you want to do. And having somebody like that in my life is incredible.
You got a rare one. That's a very it's a special thing, man.
And she's a go-getter too, and that's actually what attracted me more than anything about her. I'm like, she gets up and gets it. She's a real estate agent. She goes out and crushes it on her own terms, and we understand like that. And then again, my folks and my friends and Booker, those people in my life who want to genuinely see me succeed. A good mentor of mine, James Walker. These people, they're paramount to where I am today.
We are getting to the end. I got the 10 fingers up on my man Josh over there. But I want to know, what is the vision, for Gilmore Media? I think this is a wonderful place, to end and to bookend, so to speak. Tell me, what is the vision?
Again, I never set out to be a businessman, and I still don't. But I've always been a creative, and I wanted to find a way to give back to other creatives, create an avenue for other people. And as we talked about before, building bridges, not walls. And I noticed there's so much talent, not only in this city, but I've gotten to work all throughout this country with the advent of the internet and Zoom and all these things. I work with so many cool people, and I'm like, why are we all doing this alone? We should do this together. And I saw a hole in the market where people weren't reaching out to independent creators. It was like, if you look at the people who are making podcasts now, it's like, oh, Prince Harry, President Obama. You got to be some big name, right?
Yeah.
To get
back to being a celebrity.
Yeah, back to being a celebrity. And to me, that's not what podcasting ever was really about. It wasn't about your celebrity that you brought to it. It's about the authenticity you brought to the medium and your one-of-a-kind point of view and your perspective. We learned with those other podcasts I just mentioned, no disrespect to those people at all, but they didn't connect because they didn't feel the authenticity behind them. And for me, I wanted to create a place to where these independent creators who are really big, like yourself, about their art, about what they're doing, nose to the grindstone. I wanted to create a place to where we can all band together, have a strength in numbers approach, and I can give some of the game that I've learned, because, again, I've been in this now 11 years, where I've seen everything you can imagine in podcasting, the trends, the game that I've just learned just by being around, by osmosis. I wanted to impart that to other people and create a community where we can really bond together, share with one another, grow with one another, and learn from one another. I'm not claiming I know everything, and I never want to be that person who knows everything. I always want to be learning.
But you know a little something.
But I know something about this particular thing. It's like, hey, let me give that hand to somebody who I wish was there for me when I was starting out, and learn and navigating this thing blindfolded. And that was the impetus for doing Gilmore Media. And again, I also wanted to be responsible for and be in control of my own destiny, right? I think we all work to be our own boss. We all work to be our own person, our own man, and not be reliant on others from that monetary perspective. Creating your own, which is what y'all are doing with the Be Someone podcast, which is why you're one of the first people I reached out to. Say, hey, man, I love what you're doing. Like, how can we collaborate? Let me help in whatever way I can. And again, I'm not trying to get rich off of it. I'm not trying to do anything but create a community of like-minded, independent creators who can go and create, but we can do it together and bond together. That way we can attract big-name sponsorships, big-name guests, talent share. Hey, man, and like I said, if someone's going on a media run, say somebody calls me up and says, hey, man, I got XX and X who wants to come and be on your show. I'll be like, hey, you know what? That'd be great. But can we also get it on the Be Someone podcast? And can we also get it on Coffee Meets Vodka? And can we also get them on Scoundrels Inc.? And they can do a little press run just within our own.
That's a wonderful idea.
Source. Yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted to try to do and give people, opportunities to reach different platforms, because your audience is different than my audience. My audience is different than the Hall of Fame's audience. The Hall of Fame's audience, you know what I mean? And just trying to create that. And, podcasts are a part of what I want Gilmore Media to be. But again, it's trying to bring all these things to Houston. I want it, one of the things I talked to Matthew McConaughey about, one of the questions I was dead set on asking him, how do we get more art in Texas? How do we have movies shoot here? How do we have TV shoot here? How can we get producers to come out here and see what we have to offer? Because there's no city that's more diverse than Houston. There's no city that's more creative than Houston, that's more independent-minded. I mean, we've seen them from back in the day of ESG selling 1 million copies here in the city.
Out the trunk.
Right? Out the trunk, man. We can get it popping in Houston.
We actually wrote the blueprint for the independent artist.
Yes.
And the rest of the country
Without Houston, there wouldn't be a Chance the Rapper, right? He wouldn't have known how to do this without what we did in the city. ASAP Rocky blew up from following the Houston blueprint and the way that our guys, our legends did it, right? And that was a big thing too, is like, how can we bring all media to Houston? If you're having a red carpet premiere, you better hit New York, LA, and then Houston. Forget about that Chicago mess. We're not trying to go there anymore. Who wants to go to, no disrespect to Chicago, but who wants to go to Indianapolis? Right?
They just caught a stray bullet. Ain't nothing against Chicago, but come to Houston, man. Come to Houston.
But this is where you need to be, man. This is where you need to be.
We're trending in the correct direction.
And you know what? We've always been a business town. We've always been a STEM kind of town, and we've had the Johnson Space Center, things of that nature. But we can be an arts town too, and we need to be an arts town. And that's one thing that I've been talking to people who are connected to the mayor's office, trying to get more arts and culture here. Why don't we have big music festivals? Why don't we have film festivals? These are the ideas that I want to help bring here. I want to have the Houston Film Festival, the Houston Music Festival. We used to have stuff like that, Summerfest and Day for Night, I think it was called. But we need more, and there's no reason we can't. And that's part of the mission too with Gilmore Media. I wasn't creative enough to come up with a better name, but other than that, I really want to bring TV, movies, podcasts, live entertainment, festivals to this city and share Houston culture with the world.
Well, me and Josh feel extremely blessed that you thought of us, reached out.
I'm blessed to have y'all as a part of the group, part of the team, man. Because again, like no teammate, it's almost like the triangle that Phil Jackson would run, right? No one's bigger than the triangle. And we're all trying to share the knowledge that we have, share the resources that we have. You know, you hit me up in an email like, hey, man, how can I do this and this? This is what I think. Let's work. Let's try to figure it out. Let's make it happen. That's what I've always been about. And if I see opportunity that one maybe isn't right for me, or I can't do it, or I'm not available or whatever, I'm not one of these people that says, well, if I can't do it, no one can do it. You know, hey, man, I can't do it, but Be Someone Podcast can. They might be available, or they might be a better fit than I would be. Maybe you should hit them up. Like, let me put you in contact. I've always been like that. I've always tried to look for other opportunities for people. I don't know where that comes from, but that's always what my mindset has been. Because I am a collaborator by nature. I don't like working by myself. I feed off the energy of other people. That's why I like the band. We all have ideas. And in our band, you know, you have me, who comes from, you know, the background I come from, you know, you're raised here in the city. You've got people who have parents who are from the Caribbean. Our DJ is Vietnamese. My boy Avery, he's a mix of black, white, and Asian, you know, and coming from these different cultural backgrounds is what makes us so strong. I think the same thing about Houston. Coming from all the backgrounds that we come from is what makes us so strong. I feel the same about Gilmore Media. Having a diversity of ideas and opinions and cultures and backgrounds and show types is what is going to make it a powerhouse.
Yeah, well, something really good to end on is this. A rising tide raises all ships, and I'm a big believer in that.
And I am the boat, so.
Well, hey, can you let our audience know where they could, find you and on social media, your podcast, the album drop, all that information? Let them know.
You can find everything on theboatbradgilmore.com. Somebody has bradgilmore.com and they're not using it. You know how irritating that is for me? But the boatbradgilmore.com, you can find my Huge Pop podcast, the Collection podcast, Booker and I's show, my CW videos. I do a Clue the Movie podcast, a Back to the Future podcast. I do a lot of stuff. You can find it all there. And the album, 2011, Happiness, Sadness, etc., available wherever you stream your music.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, hey, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you stopping by the Be Someone podcast. Thank you for bringing us on the team, man.
Yes,
and let's grow this Houston scene.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it, man. The first appearance, but hopefully not the last.
For sure, man. Well, hey, thank y'all for watching the Be Someone podcast. It's your host, Coach Chris Ortiz, and the boat, Brad Gilmore. Take care, have a blessed day, and go out and be that someone.
Lights, cameras, action. Use the flow, molasses. Blue the line, my faction. Future frightening glasses. Applause from the masses.
This is the Be Someone podcast.